Okay, great. We are live with our second segment of Quantum Leap, and I'm excited to welcome another guest, Gio, who I'd consider in our East Bay mastermind of really top experts in what they do, and just a great person to know and work with and learn from. And she also has some great new offerings coming out, which we're going to talk about. But I did want to first get to Cory to introduce himself and check in for this second segment here.
Hey everyone, Cory and I here, business coach with Take Wing Coaching. And just glad to be here today. Thank you, David.
No problem. And Gio is actually a business owner, a master of many talents, and her expertise is writing and this really ability to see what is important about people and their message. And if you check out her copy and her style, it's incredible. It has this kind of sassy, punchy, take on things, and she can write in different styles, but I think she's really unique in that she's out there available on contract to do some really high level campaigns on copy and biographies as well. She did my bio for my LinkedIn, and it was kind of a life-changing thing in how you represent and talk about yourself in kind of an elevator pitch, so to speak, a written elevator pitch. So I will check that out on my LinkedIn, but I did want to get right to her so I don't mischaracterize too much about where her focus is. But Gio, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and tell us what you do.
Thanks, David. Thanks so much for having me on. And it's a pleasure to be back. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So I'm a copywriter and I also teach copywriting as well. So that is how I spend my time. And, I love writing bios, as you said. Teaching a bio workshop coming up soon. I can talk more about that later, but yeah, it's super amazing to help people transform, both their perception of who they are when you take that messaging and switch it up and really focus on what is, the transformation that they're offering for other people through their experience.
Great. And I know that's one thing I really admire about you too, is that you're one of the people out there teaching this stuff. I see you you have this amazing social media presence where you share this really expert insider info on social media. And you're one of the few people who not only knows it that well, but you share it too with the world. So it's so great to see. And I do, we had you on about, it was probably over 6 months ago. And I know you'd told me about a recent business pivot that you made. I know you have maybe a couple pivots and that you have your course coming out, but could you tell us about some of your new things and if you would in fact call that a pivot and what that was?
Yeah, definitely. So it's not something that's totally new for me. I've been teaching copywriting for a long time. I've been doing copywriting for 12 years. And then probably soon after I started, I was teaching. I just, couldn't really help myself from sharing with other people, other business owners, how to elevate their copy. So I've taught lots of classes over the years, website writing classes. And we recently did one on nurture sequences. So for people who are trying to build their online email marketing empire, we did that and it was super fun. And yeah, so I've got a year-long copywriting mentorship coming up that's starting in January, and it's super exciting. We're basically going to be taking all of the foundational bits of copy that people need for an online business and really shaping it up and getting it ready for the masses.
Great. And I did want to give you an opportunity if you had anything you wanted to share on your screen about that, or we can just do the interview without screen sharing, but you're welcome to share any examples. Or you have such a cool website, and I love your admiration for photography too. You have some amazing photography on your website as well.
Oh, thank you so much. That was from another BNI member, Chloe Jackman, who's in the Bay Area. She did my photos, so I definitely recommend her. Yeah, so you can check out the program at giomarcus.com if you're interested in learning how to write your own copy. If you are, love writing your own copy, love it, hate it, definitely, I can help it make it easier for people. So that's at giomarcus.com.
Great. And I know you have a lot of this stuff really broken down to a science. You mentioned the nurture sequence and tons of different sequences and follow-ups. And you have, I don't know if you might be able to just share with us some of your insights. I know you just shared on social media how to make a 90-second bio, but I was curious if you could just comment on kind of what makes an effective sales conversation or copy on a landing page or email, just as an example of how you think about some of these hugely important business deliverables, so to speak.
Yeah, well, a lot of times what I see in copy that is not as effective, is not high converting, it's really less focused on the customer and what's in it for them than it should be. So that's a pretty common mistake that I see in copy. It's either using language that the ideal customer doesn't use, or it's appealing to something that they just don't care about really. And so that's the number one cardinal rule, is to really put yourself in the shoes of the person who you're speaking to and respecting their intelligence, and saying things that they would actually say. So cutting out a lot of that jargon, unless you're in like a highly specialized, like software as a service kind of vertical, it's a good idea to really speak your ideal client's language and cut out some of that, like words like optimize. I'm always kind of joking around about that one, because it's a little bit of a cliche. It means something different to every single person, and it doesn't really talk about tangible results that are really interesting to people.
Great. And I know Cory and I actually had a segment on Quantum Leap. I think it was a week ago, and he made such a great point about, it's not so much selling ourselves as telling people how we can help them. And he really crystallized that so well. And I know you do that so well in such an elegant way. And I did want to just see if Cory had anything to add about copy and his experience in this genre, or reaction to what you said, Gio, because I know this is something Cory works a lot on too with his business.
Yeah, I do not write copy for people, and I don't usually tell people what to put in their copy. That's not really what I do. But we did hire a copywriter this year, largely because we're kind of in that same situation where we have a tendency to know what it is we're offering, but not always to say it to the people who, in a way that they're going to hear it, right, and pay attention to it. And it's really good to have somebody who kind of comes at it from another angle and can evaluate that. Gail and I are very fortunate that, we're both good writers and we're both good editors for each other. So I think we do fine in our articles and things like that. But when it comes to that conversation that you have through sales, it just doesn't, it comes through very differently in writing than maybe it does in person. And so that's where it's so beneficial to have somebody who can really go through that process of, pulling out that information from the business owner and then, manipulating it in such a way that it's going to make sense to, the prospects, the buyers, the clients, everyone involved, especially on a web page or through the nurturing sequences and so on. So
I just had one quick thing to add before we get to your question, Cory, is I think you're definitely right about that. And I remember hearing, the best advice if you want to buy a book is to read the first page to see how that author conveys their ideas. And I think a lot of what we see in bad writing and bad copy is just this murkiness. There's not this voice that's kind of shining through that resonates. And I think it's like using words like optimize and all this jargon that doesn't really, speak in plain language. If you read Gio's copy, she has a voice, a strong voice about, in a style, but it also fits into a goal. So, it's really night and day, the difference between bad copy and good copy. And I just wanted to add my 2 cents there, but I don't know if you have a reaction to that, Gio. Otherwise I'm going to turn it over to Cory.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, the more specific that you can get, the better. But you have to be a little bit careful in regards to that, because you also don't want to, you also want to be careful, like you want to be specific in certain areas. So for example, you don't want to say something like, if you're not necessarily going after a target audience who works from home, works from home, you don't want to like be that specific with, by saying like, oh, or even like, for example, say you're targeting women, but you're saying something like, oh, your boss is going to, love you for this or whatever. But like, what if they don't have a boss? What if they are the boss? What if they work for themselves? And then you've kind of, you've gotten specific, but at the cost of alienating people. So that's why it's really good to like be very careful where you're specific and be a little bit more broad in other places.
Great. I'll let you. We'll go to number 4 then, Cory. I believe I could set it up too, but
Yeah. So, and kind of just shifting over to social media, could you tell us about how you use social media to connect with your ideal client?
Yeah, definitely. So I use social media. I'm big on Facebook, and I have a Facebook group that I post in very regularly. I love doing videos and posting questions and just getting conversations going with people, and helping people to really understand that they just might be their own best copywriter. I think the temptation for newer business owners or even people who've been doing it for a while is to firm it out to a copywriter. But there is a couple of risks that you run with that. For one, it's very important to find somebody who's got your brand voice, and that can take a while to find that. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me and say, I paid a copywriter all this money and it doesn't sound like me. Or it's like, or it's very fluffy, or it's not working, it's not converting. So while copywriting is definitely a skill that you can learn, and I think it's a worthwhile one to invest time into, so that even when you do hire a copywriter, if you ever get to that point that you decide to let somebody else touch your copy, then you know what to look for. Like, what actually good copywriting is. Otherwise, you're just putting a lot of trust in a copywriter, and you also can't give them some of the specifics that they need to write really great copy for you.
Yeah, and a lot depends on what it is you're doing, and yeah, their knowledge of that.
Yeah. So social media, for my clients, I've written lots and lots of Facebook ads, but I don't run Facebook ads myself. I do organic everything. So, one day I will be moving over to Facebook ads more, but for now I'm, loving just having that very personal interaction with people.
So why would you say, or what would you say is your why? Why do you do what you do?
Oh, I just have always loved writing. And also, for copywriting, I feel like it's such an incredible opportunity to amplify real, voices that are really important to get out there in the world. Like, my clients are all, historically, I've worked with tons of health and wellness companies. So people who are doing work that really, really impacts people's lives. And I love that. I love the opportunity to, either like help people realize what foods to eat or what not to eat, um, what supplements to take versus which ones are just a waste of money, things that really can impact their energy level. There's a lot that people can do. And I feel like people get really disempowered by the medical industry. So that's one thing that I love to do. For my like my coaching clients, I love working with them because it's really fun to watch their confidence grow and to see them becoming, more and more comfortable with their brand voice, getting their message out there in the world, getting more clients, growing their business. I mean, it's incredible to watch what people can do with a little bit of nurturing.
And who would you say is your ideal client then?
So I love working with business owners who have some experience. They've been writing their own copy, but they're just not loving it. And they feel like, they're a little bit cringy when they think about people going to their website and checking it out, or, they're writing, but the writing, they know that it's off, or they're writing too much, or, it's wandering back and forth. Like, those are the people that are super fun to work with because you can get a lot of results very quickly. And, it's something that can directly impact their business in a very real way and in nearly real time, most of the cases.
Great. And I know we have a bit more time, so I'm going to ask a wild card question. And Cory, feel
Ooh.
free to ask your, come up with a wild card for Gio. I know you've worked with some New York Times bestselling authors on book launch campaigns, and you really have this down to a science, a whole series of copy campaigns about how to convert and sell books. Could you just tell us, how you help an author launch a book? Just a little hint of kind of what you do there.
Yeah, so I actually have not worked on too many book launch campaigns. My specialty is more like working with those New York Times bestselling authors to sell e-products like information courses, like online courses, or physical products, e-commerce products, things like that. So, so I can't quite answer that question. I mean, I've definitely helped people sell, do things like have online summits that funnel into selling a book. So in that case, what we've done in the past is do a lot of promotion, do a lot of free content leading up to the book launch. And then afterwards do a series of emails, like an email marketing campaign to really launch the book. And, oftentimes get it to a bestseller status by having so many people pre-order it or order it on the first day that it's out. Excuse me, one second.
Oh, no
I had my lap dog on my lap and she was wanting to get down.
That was my bad. And that I guess that makes sense in terms of where the market's at, and that you make more probably off those courses and all the things you do around a book than just launching a book, which is a little bit like last generation, so to speak.
Well, the books are really important and they're really great for credibility. They're a really great way to get a message out to a lot of people. But, a lot of people use the book. You're right. A lot of people use the book as a launching point for, further engagement with people and to like continue to help people take action in a different way. So they're related, and it's all part of the big piece, especially when you've got like a multi-million-dollar business and you're selling the book, you're going on, you're perhaps going on stages and just building your audience and building the revenue. And the book is a really integral piece of that for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And I do see you as a person that has this extraordinary kind of business knowledge of kind of big picture business concepts and how to sell things and how to package things just by your own experience. I don't know if you have any advice for, somebody looking to launch a course, or, kind of how to get started, or maybe what they should do is hire a professional like you. But I know they always like to try to do it themselves, at least initially, maybe for their first course. And then if they come up with the money to do a more expert launch.
Yeah, so I think that a really good first step is to work with your current network. So the past clients that you have, the referral partners that have a good audience that resonates with yours as well, and I'm doing some cross promotion with affiliates. Those are always two really great places to start. Any kind of marketing effort, anytime you're trying to launch a course or something big like that, you want to be doing marketing leading up to that. So you can't just like drop in and be like, hey, buy my course. You've got to be doing things, sometimes a year, 6 months in advance before. So marketing is really like an ongoing thing. And when you're doing a launch, it's more of like typically a more concentrated period of time where you're, kind of gung ho about stuff. And, I think, and the other piece of advice is just to have patience. So sometimes, if the messaging is off for your launch, then that can really affect the success of it. And so that's why it's really good to get feedback on your messaging before you launch, before you spend a ton of energy on the course. And to be honest, messaging is something that sometimes you need to test out. So there's ways to test out messaging before you do a full-on launch and, write tons and tons of emails and a sales page and all that stuff. So that's what I'd absolutely recommend, is like testing out messaging, which social media is great for, to see what people respond to. And then using that real-time data to inform how you market and sell the course going forward.
Right. Cory, I know Cory actually has been working on a book, and he's launched a series of courses over time. I don't know if you have any questions for Gio on that, or comments to share your experience in this area, Cory.
Not a whole lot. I think, everything she's talking about just makes a lot of sense. It's good to work with somebody who, can support you in that endeavor. And there's a lot of things that kind of go on around it. So, but having that message clear is a big part of it. And I think one of the benefits of working with somebody too is so many people can get locked in kind of this perfectionism, and having, that support and whatever it comes through, if they're mentoring, coaching, hiring somebody just as a guide to get you through it, it can really kind of just, point out where really that can be improved and where this is enough. And so that's one thing I've experienced a lot with people trying to write books, is they tend to be perfectionists.
Yeah, totally. You want to focus on the things that actually make a difference and ignore the other stuff, because you can't do everything, and not
Right.
everything is a good use of your time. But I totally agree with you. Working with I love working with business coaches. It just makes such a big difference. It makes things go faster, shortens the learning curve, and is a good use of money, especially if you're doing something that is sort of, if you're doing something that is going to be a long-term, for your long-term good of yourself or your business.
Right. Yeah.
I want to take it seriously.
Did we ask about your ideal client, or did we leave?
We did. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I just want to make sure we got to that. Well, good. Yeah, we're about at time, and I'm looking forward to you launching your course, and we can talk more when you get there to how we can help promote it and bring you back on to talk about it at some point next year. So, so great to know you and see all the great work that you're up to.
Oh, thanks so much, David and Cory. Thank you again. It's so good to see you both. My course is open for enrollment too right now. So if people are interested, you can go to my website at giomarcus.com, and you can book a call with me to apply and find out more about it. And so yeah, there's some really good bonuses for people who sign up early too.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on, and Dave and Cory and Gio signing off for this edition of Quantum Leap. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.